You're watching Good Morning Canada.
Good morning, everyone. I am Deja Donovan, and I'm reporting live for Good Morning Canada. Today, we have a special guest for our special audience. Now, the topic of diversity and inclusion has again become a hot topic in education and business as reports of unfair treatment of employees and students have begun to circle the local news. To shed some light on these issues, we have with us today our special guest, diversity leader, Lashona Alfred. All right, good morning, everyone. Yes, I'm Lashona Alfred, a diversity leader here in Canada, and I'm so happy to be on today's show. Now, let me get right into our presentation. When we think of diversity, we often think of differences in people's ethnicity, religion, or simply differing opinions. However, issues often arise where these terms are concerned. Now, here in Canada, we pride ourselves as being known for accepting immigrants from all over the world. But does inclusion go further than that? Let's find out. Now, Canada was chosen because of its noteworthy reputation as a multicultural nation. Multiculturalism generally means the acceptance of different migrant and minority communities other than the behavior of one's own community and social structure, according to Castle's 2000. SIPC 2013 highlights Canada's ethnocultural diversity as it was chosen as one of the most migrant receiving countries in the world. The nation was also the first in the world to adopt multiculturalism with federal laws which are still proven relevant today. Now, a testament to the receiving nature of the education system is revealed in the heritage language programs, which ensure that Italian, Greek, Portuguese, and other languages are specifically taught to cater to the needs of migrants, especially those from the Caribbean. Now, programs with lessons including English as a second language and English as a dualistic dialect are also provided for immigrants. Now, let's turn our attention to the screen.
Now let's take a look at Canada's policies. Policies for diversity and inclusion in Canada have not originated as educational policies, but they are grounded in Canadian legal framework and constitutional values. This constitutes a rights-based approach to inclusion. The federal legislation that guides institutional approaches to equity, diversity, and inclusion includes the Canadian Multiculturalism Act of 1988, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms of 1982, the Employment Equity Act of 1986, and the Canadian Human Rights Act of 1977. Now, each establishes principles and values to be included in Canadian society. In addition, there is provincial legislation that guides and supports institutional practice. This information was taken from Tamtik and Gutner, 2019. Now, the general aims of the previously mentioned policies are to lead new and innovative initiatives on diversity and inclusion, to develop innovative solutions for recruitment and talent management, to coordinate with stakeholders whose policies and programs affect the diversity and inclusion agenda, to co-develop solutions with the many diversity and inclusion networks across the public service, and to lead change management and monitor the ongoing progress on these priorities and commitment. Now, There are some organizations that make it their priority to deal with diversity issues across the nation. The Canadian Centre for Diversity and Inclusion is an organization that focuses on researching and examining the demographic trends in the Canadian workplace to create practical methods for employers to promote inclusive practices in the workplace. One of their goals is to help employers to celebrate diversity within their workforce in order to increase the potential of their members. Now, another such organization that we can highlight today is Inclusion Canada. Inclusion Canada launched Inclusive Education Canada as a separate branch in the year 2009. It is a non-governmental organization that is committed to providing and maintaining quality education for students in inclusive schools and classrooms in the Canadian nation. The IEC advocates for effective policy provision and investment in support for teachers and students, as well as builds capacity in our schools and classrooms to make inclusion both a success and a practical reality. Now, while we're on the topic of inclusion, we must look at the benefits for those who would fall under this bracket. Now, till 2015 sees the medical model of disability as defining the individual as one that has a challenge, while the social model of disability emphasizes the ways in which a person's experience of disability is shaped by their environment. Although Canada has no federal legislation protecting a child with a disability's right to inclusive education, each child is still protected because education comes under provincial and territorial jurisdiction. Now, Article 23.1 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child states that a mentally or physically disabled child should enjoy a full and decent life in conditions which ensure dignity, promote self-reliance, and facilitate the child's active participation in the community. And that's what inclusion is all about. Article 24.2 states that persons with disabilities can receive support, should receive the support required within the general education system to facilitate their effective education. Now, these practices, these policies, are upheld by the governing bodies in the Canadian educational system. Now, we're getting into the actual classroom. There are multiple inclusive strategies which are used in the Canadian system, which include inclusion, in which students with disabilities participate in the class with the other students. Then there's inclusion, which students with disabilities participate in the general classroom but are pulled out at certain times to focus on a specific subject or task or lesson by themselves. And finally, there's inclusion, which students with disabilities are completely on their own in a separate classroom, but still in the integration of the regular school system. Now, all of these approaches to inclusion are great and effective in their own rights. But the Inclusive Education Summit in 2017, held in Richmond, Canada, revealed new strategies for inclusion in the classroom. The findings included a need for re-evaluating curriculums that limit teachers and their students to a set of static goals rather than focusing on everyone, regardless of their ability, being able to move forward. It was also suggested that successful regulation, self-regulation, in kindergarten predicts student achievement throughout the rest of one's academic life.
Now, when looking at the bigger picture, we can definitely ask if all of these policies and non governmental organizations are in place, why do these issues still occur? Well, that is a very good question to close today's special feature with. As a diversity leader, it is well known that issues will occur in organizations where there are wide cultural disparities. Now, the more of a mixing pot or multicultural the environment, the more likely it is that some members may tend to feel disadvantaged at times. The important thing, however, is how we respond to these challenges. And luckily, as we saw in today's presentation, Canada has many policies and organizations that can be easily referred to seek remedies. It is also evident that research is ongoing as to how we can continue to improve the inclusivity of our educational system. Oh, yes, I totally agree. Thank you so much for joining us today, Lashona. We hope to hear from you again. Thanks, viewers. And before we leave, a special message to our sponsors.
You're watching Good Morning Canada.